Patient engagement is now widely recognized as a key to improved healthcare outcomes and lower costs, but it's difficult to achieve. My guest today, Dave Bennett, is CEO of pCare, a leading patient engagement solutions provider. The company started out way back in 1950, well before anybody heard of patient engagement, but it's evolved with the times and the technologies. The company's not standing still. Instead, it's looking ahead to help health systems implement the hospital of the future. Hi, everyone. I'm David Williams, president of strategy consulting firm HealthBiz Group and host of the HealthBiz podcast, a weekly show where I interview top healthcare leaders about their lives and careers. If you enjoy this episode, please press that like button and subscribe. Dave, welcome to the HealthBiz podcast.
Great. Thanks. I look forward to speaking to you, David.
That sounds good. Well, before we jump into the present day, let me ask you a bit about your background and your upbringing. In particular, maybe any childhood influences that have stuck with you.
Sure, great question. So, I've grew up in an interesting family. My father actually worked in the wholesale food business, so I grew up basically around food, supermarkets and warehouses and those sort of things. In most of my childhood, got to spend a good deal of time going to work with my dad. So I think that probably started the early foundation of being driven and hardworking and kind of working probably beyond the traditional 480-hour work week. So after that, my first real job after going off to college was I was fortunate enough to go off to college and had an Army scholarship. So I actually had the federal government pay for my undergraduate degree. I went to a place called the Citadel, a military college, and actually started a career in the military before venturing outside of that world and then ending up in the world of healthcare for many decades. So that's
now,
how
Dave, when you were in the military, did you experience? So it's great to get college paid for, and you pay back with your service and so on. Did you anticipate making a sort of an overall career in the military, or was it always a stepping stone? How'd you think about it, and what'd you learn when you were in the service?
Yeah, for me, I'll tell you what. My time in the military was probably I have many of my most fondest memories during that time. My original intention was to make a career of the military, was to go in and really do this for the rest of my life, but like many things in life, things change. You run into a few other opportunities, and I slowly decided, hey, I think I could best have add to my life and finding something outside of the military altogether. But I did remain in the Army Reserve and National Guard for many years afterwards. But actually made it on my way out, and then really focused in the civilian sector. But I learned a lot of valuable lessons, particularly working with a broad array of people with all kinds of backgrounds from all over the country. I mean, the one thing that's really quite interesting in the United States, particularly in the military, is we all come from a mixed background with a vast amount of experiences, and it really translates into a number of opportunities. I think the biggest one is learning how to work with a number of people and from all backgrounds and educations, and then also really how can you learn from them, because people around you, no matter who you work with, have a great deal of interesting background and a lot of things that you may not really be familiar with. So it really opens your eyes to lots of opportunities, and also, frankly, how great this country is that you can have people from all over the world actually come in and meld together for a common purpose, which is, I think, really common no matter whether or not you're in the military or whether or not you're in the corporate community.
So, Dave, when you left the military, it sounds like, as you mentioned, you've had decades of experience on the civilian side, but in healthcare in particular. Did you sort of wander into healthcare, or was that sort of a specific goal that you had?
I had always grown up around healthcare, with the earliest days, both my mother being a nurse and my grandfather being an orthopedic surgeon. So I'd always kind of seen it from those perspectives and was always interested in biology. I think I excelled pretty well in that area in high school and such. So in the back of my mind, I always had, and even in college, I was a biology major. So I always had a peak interest in biology per se, and ended up kind of meandering more into the healthcare side of things in biology and how it all relates. So, but it was a chosen interest of mine, and one that I seem to have a great affinity and a great deal of interest in.
What were some of the career highlights in healthcare before you got to pCare?
You know, I went, when I got out of the military, I did go to graduate school, and I spent a good deal of time learning biochemistry and molecular biology, all these things that were up and coming back then. So I started on the academic side, and then actually when I got out of graduate school, I actually went into a program that was a research grant area that was funded by the NIH on cancer research. So I started as a research scientist on the bench working in a technical aspect. So that's how I started. And then slowly but surely, what I did find out is, while I really enjoyed the research stuff, I seem to be much better off interacting with people and focusing on the one-to-one interactions, other than the great studious person in the corner working hours in a research lab. I actually was able to migrate and take the technology aspect of elements that I've learned and move into the business world. And applying both my technical knowledge, but my ability to interact people to people and really focusing on business per se. So I made that transition and worked for a number of companies. The largest one at the time early on was the largest company in Great Britain, a company called Imperial Chemical Industries. So I went and worked for them in a technical aspect, and ultimately migrated over to the business side of the house for them, and then seemed to be a natural fit in that, and then progressed in many other companies over several years in various roles, whether or not it was a sales role, which I was in technical sales, to marketing, sales and marketing, to managing teams, to operations, to a myriad of solutions, and a number of private companies and publicly traded businesses over the years.
So with pCare, I'm curious about what attracted you to the company in the first place. Why did this seem like the logical next step?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And it gets back to the root of why I have had an interest in healthcare. So, you know, one of the things, I'll give you a little personal history that will kind of ground your audience and kind of my thought of getting in this. I had, particularly, and this relates to pCare, one of the things that I did, I kid people, I had two government tracks in my life, the federal government, then I went in the private sector for many years, and then I ended up working in the state government in the form of working at a large academic medical center. And the reason I ended up in a large academic medical center is, like a lot of people out there, I had a very sick father. My father had retired, had a number of chronic conditions, and wasn't doing really well. And I knew only had a couple of years left, frankly. So I spent a good deal of time, stepped down from a publicly traded company where I was a vice president of business development, and spent time with my family, particularly helping my mother manage my father's chronic illness. And in the end, my father passed away. And one of the things that was a very profound impact on me was, here was a guy that was the CEO and chairman of a Fortune 500 company, but he really could not manage and understand everything that was going on with his own health, right? And how can I play a proactive role? What does this all mean? So, like a lot of people, I looked inside and said, you know, there's a problem with healthcare in the fact that you have somebody like this, and you have a myriad of people from all kinds of backgrounds that really don't seem to be highly engaged and really understand what's going on with them. So I thought that the next step would be for me to go back to, potentially, and spend some time in a large hospital healthcare system, and maybe take what I had learned not only from that, but from the private sector, and help them harness this and focus on delivering better solutions that focused on patient engagement and patient interaction at the end of the day. So, long story short, I ended up at the Medical University of South Carolina for several years. I had seen and read about some interesting technology, this quote, interactive patient care solutions. I was in an executive leadership position there and was able to garner enough support within the organization for that organization to buy or purchase and license such a system. They very early on, there were only a handful of organizations doing this. and basically installed it with the goal that it was designed to interact directly with patients and better engage them and help them navigate through their health journey, right, through chronic conditions and others. So as a key element, I got that deployed, saw a lot of success, and decided from then on that I really wanted to focus on patient interaction, patient engagement, and then made the combined or concerted effort to leave the academic world and academic medicine and an integrated healthcare system and focus on that niche of healthcare, which I did for many, many years. Long story short, I ultimately was the chief operating officer at the company that I ultimately transitioned into being the chief operating officer many years later for the company that I had installed their interactive patient care system at the Medical University of South Carolina, further embraced that technology, left them subsequently years later, and then ultimately came to their largest competitor, which was pCare. And that's how I ended up here focusing on these sort of technologies.
Great. So Dave, patient engagement is something that maybe wasn't so well recognized some time ago, but now it is seen as a key, as I mentioned in the introduction. And I'm wondering, now that healthcare organizations have embraced the concept of it, what are the main challenges that they face in making it a reality and going beyond just a goal?
That's great. That's a good question as well. So what's happened over the past decade, as you said, 10 years ago, this idea of patient interactive care and patient engagement, it was of interest, but it's really peaked over the past decade. And for a couple of reasons. One is with the movement to digital transformation across our lives, right? Whether or not it's banking, the ability to go online and shop for houses, or Amazon for retail purchases and all that, we've seen the adoption of digital technologies and how they've transformed people's lives, right? That has obviously created huge opportunities with digitizing the overall patient experience and the ability to engage and interact with patients, right? So as a result, over the past decade, we've seen more and more organizations move to this digital technologies and then further embrace patient interactive care, which is a form of digital engagement, right? It really takes place in the patient's room and actually can even further outside the four walls of the hospital, but it's by digitally presenting interactions on the TV screen, in particular in the patient's room. So, for instance, I can ask you questions about your condition. I can prescribe you a video piece that explains what your surgery is about. I can prescribe digital video content that may tell you what you need to do once you're at home, right? So those adoption rates have increased, and more people are doing that because it's a lot easier to deliver those interactions. But again, as we become much more mobile with devices and others, it's also easy for that digital content to follow me around no matter where I'm at, right? So some of the challenges that we've seen in interest is how can we better improve engagement and support through these digital interactions that lead to better improved patient satisfaction, right? Better health outcomes. Like, can I really prescribe content, for instance, about my illness and that might lend me to better heal while I'm at home, better recover, right? How can I better prepare somebody or inform them as what to expect of what their day is here in the hospital? All the way down to things that are around the overall experience. Hey, can somebody we're on an on-demand society, but can I actually on-demand select a movie that I'd like to watch for myself, for my family members or guests while I'm in the hospital? All of that sort of stuff. So there's been a migration and adoption of that at a breakneck speed in hospitals, which has created really interesting challenges, right? Because meanwhile, hospitals have adopted other technologies, electronic medical records, a number of ongoing things. So how does this all fit in, and how do I get the adoption of it within an organization that leads to better patient engagement, better patient satisfaction, and better information? If you think about it, one of the big challenges in hospitals has been that the age of the information overload age, right? We all focus on information. We could get it whether or not it's through emails, whether or not it's on Google looking up restaurant reviews, right? I have all these data points. How can I aggregate those, and how can I provide value and create a meaningful meaningful data points that a consumer or patient or family member while I'm in the hospital can use, right? So those have been big challenges, and we've begun to harness those. It might be simple things as what to expect. Today's my second day in the hospital. Who's going to come and see me? What do I need to do to get out here on day 5? What's important to me? What does the hospital want me to do to help accelerate my ability to get out of the hospital? So those are all challenges. Yeah.
It sounds like a lot. There's a lot of things that are challenges. You stated it pretty simply, so I think people can understand it. I haven't done a formal assessment, but I would say that the typical age of a company whose CEO I'm introducing and interviewing on the HealthBiz podcast is maybe 5 to 10 years old. There's certainly some older ones as well. I noted that your company's been around for more like 75 years. And I'm just wondering, I'm always curious to hear the story about how a company may have evolved. You may or may not be privy to all the history, but how did the company get from there to here over that time frame?
We have a very interesting story, and one that I like to share with people. So the original name and the name of the company, the corporate name is called TVR Communications. And TVR, you go, well, what's that mean? Well, this company was born out of a TV rental business, right? So back in the 50s, when people went to the hospital, I mean, there wasn't TVs were not patient rooms. People showed up, read the newspaper, read books. People came in, I might read to them. What this company did back in the Northeast, they were born out of the New York area. A couple of bright people got the idea, if we bought some TV sets and we went around a hospital, could we roll in a TV set on wheels? Could we rent a TV set to a patient for a day? So while they're in the hospital, they might only have access to 4 or 5 TV channels, but that might be an interesting model, right? So that's how the company was born. And sure enough, they soon found out that people were willing to pay a minimal fee to rent a TV while they were in the room in the hospital, right? As you can imagine, back in those days, also rooms were many of the rooms had more than one individual in them. They were shared rooms. They might have 2, 3, or 4 people, right? So people would rent TVs and they'd be watching in New York, particularly. They might be interested when the Yankees game was being broadcast. Yeah. And that was big to watch the Yankees or the Mets, right? Or the Lawrence Welk show or whatever it may be. But that's how the business was started.
No Mets in 1950, though.
Yeah, that's true. No Mets, but the Yankees for sure, right? But you're right. That's how the business got started. So they started in the patient entertainment aspect, or early engagement in the form of providing TVs. Again, these were distraction elements, right? If you had a surgery and you're in pain, maybe being able to watch Lawrence Welk or whatever might be of entertaining, or Liberace or any of those things on TV might be interesting. So that's how we started, and they built quite a small business around that. So fast forward to where we are today, TVs are still at the core of what we do, because the TV now, it's a digital device, obviously with smart TVs. And now not only do we deliver the entertainment aspects, whether or not it's all the cable TV channels or movies on demand, but we now use that as a message board to deliver key information about what you might be able to expect, to pushing specific content that are going to educate you about your condition or why you're in the hospital, right? To interactions that collect information via the TV that then are able to push it and document it back into the patient's electronic medical record. So that's how we have evolved from a TV rental business that had people that pushed TVs around and collected money from patients, primarily cash back then, to now being a digital consumer or patient and family engagement device that resides primarily in a patient room in the hospital.
Well, Dave, I appreciate you going back to the olden days of the TV rental, because you may have well told my origin story in there. I was born during the Major League All-Star break, and my dad obviously wasn't given birth, but he had a TV wheeled in and saw the All-Star game. And then right after that, it was the impossible dream season for the Boston Red Sox, and they went on a tear, and they ended up winning, the American League at that time, and they made it to the World Series, which they lost in 7 games, but nonetheless, that was like one of the most amazing pennant races in all time. It was all kicked off when I was in the birthday and possibly in the hospital, possibly by one of your televisions.
There you go. So, but it's an interesting story, interesting beginning. And again, it's like you said, it's very unusual to see a technology company that's been around 75 years. So we obviously morphed tremendously into the software realm, but again, have focused on leveraging that one device that we know so well, and that's the television.
Dave, during the pandemic, obviously there are a lot of changes. Hospitals are just hit in every direction. What was it like for your company?
I tell you that's another interesting set of stories. One thing that's unique about our company, even though we are a software company and we develop software that runs on these devices, we still have a legacy set of roots. So we still have probably over 100 individuals that go to work every day and work in our customer sites in hospitals, right? And what they primarily do there is provide concierge services. So they'll go around, show patient how to use the system, show them what movies are available, how to use the nurse call control to control the TV. They provide a number of services related to the overall experience, and they're there every day. When the pandemic came, and as you know, we were in the New York area, so we were exceptionally hit very hard. As most people in the Northeast know, we were really at the tip of the spear then. It's really telling because, again, we still have people that showed up every day to work, focused on taking care of the patients and supporting our customers, but the mission changed and the way that we work changed in many regards. So even though company changed, and again, like lots of organizations, the pandemic created great opportunity for us, but it also created unique problems that you didn't go to B school to learn how to deal with these. A lot of it was dealing with things on the fly. So think about this. Obviously, we're in the middle of a pandemic, or early on, there were personal protective equipment issues where we did not have enough PPE for nurses, clinicians, even our own staff, right? People were being left in patient rooms isolated because, again, they had a highly infectious disease. In many cases, they were being left alone for extended periods of time because the clinical staff, nurses and doctors, were dealing with people that were in respiratory distress or other very complicated situations. So we found ourselves in the middle of trying to support our customers with some very unique problems. And some of those are things that we had not prepared for that we soon learned how to deal with. And I'll give you some examples. So for instance, in each of the rooms where our system is, there's the ability to call for technical support. So we have a call center that's staffed 24 hours a day. All of a sudden, our call center was receiving calls from patients that nobody had been in, that they wanted to talk to somebody. Their phones had died. They had no way to get a hold of their loved ones. They were scared. They were dealing with lots of problems, right? So all of a sudden, my team of call center people are not used to this. They were used to dealing with, hey, guess what? The Yankees game is on channel 25. Oh, Bold and Beautiful, it's on channel 15. Or, oh, let me show you how you can order meals through the system. So now they're dealing with trying to be highly supportive of what's going on with the patients, listening more so, acknowledging that there's problems. And in some cases, I tell you what, I'm really honored to work at an organization like this because there are also countless stories where people in those organizations that work for us that supported. I've heard about Mrs. Smith down in this room that couldn't get a hold of any of her family members because she had no way to charge her phone, that would then go home or would show up with a phone charger to help that patient charge their phone, right? There are other things that we rapidly learned. So that created unique challenges. In fact, challenges of how do I train my people appropriately to have the right empathy. We're not clinical people, but also be able to listen and provide some degree of comfort to patients during this time, right? So we did those sort of things. We brought in some people. We had staff that were trained in training our call center people on how to do that. We also had other issues. There were lots of people that were at the end of life, right? And how in those situations could we connect them and their families? So we created a video connect capabilities that would allow the family members and the patients in the hospital to connect via video technology, right? So that they could talk to them, be with them. We had the ability for family members to upload photo albums into our system so that the family member patient in the hospital could be able to look at photo content. And you say, well, what's the purpose of that? But we have people that basically we knew that were dying, right? But could share wedding photos and other things that might resonate, compassionate things with that person while they were in the hospital, which gets back to the core of really kind of why I think many of us are in healthcare and why I'm in healthcare. And that's because at the end of the day, even my team, what we really wanted to do was do good. We wanted to be, we're in healthcare because we have a compassion for helping others, right? So we found little ways to leverage technology to be able to do that and provide those services while supporting our customers so that they could then focus on what was important to them. And what was important to them was to free up the nurse clinical team and doctors to focus on care, clinical care. So if there were opportunities that we could provide ancillary comfort and support, that's what we focused on because that's what our customers needed at the end of the day. Kind distraction, TV, tablet, the abilities of the tablet to interact remotely with other family members, that sort of stuff. So all of those sort of efforts came together pretty rapidly within the organization, and my team bonded together to deliver those sort of things to try to be a compassionate member of the care team for our customers.
The company has received some strong endorsements from the industry in terms of ratings. I noted that best in class. What does that mean? How did you obtain that? What does it mean for the business?
Sure. I think best in class, for those that aren't familiar, it's kind of like the J.D. Powers of software, of healthcare software. So KLAS is an independent agency or independent organization. And what they do is they have a number of categories. They actually have one for everything from electronic medical records, but they have one for interactive patient care systems. And what they do is they actually go out and speak with our customers and ask our customers to grade us. How are they doing? How was their customer support? How's their utilization? How would you rate the value of these purchases? So we have been really honored, and it's a reflection upon the people that work around me and work for our company. I mean, we're very blessed when I say we have some of the best. We've been honored and had that for 8 years in a row. So 8 years in a row is a pretty unprecedented thing. And again, it's our customers, new, old, existing, sharing their overall feedback with the system and our level of support. So year over year, we've been able to improve those scores as well. So if you were to look over the 8-year period, you would find that our top level scores have actually improved, which indicates that we're listening to them, we're making the changes, and we're adapting to what's important to them. So we've been very good at doing that. And I think that one of the things that people ask me, why are you guys successful at this? It's the voice of the customer. You've got to listen to what your customers have to say. If you can learn to listen, take that into consideration and make incremental changes that address their needs, you will be the best in class for sure.
We talked about the ancient past, the founding of the company, and then the more recent history with COVID and what you're doing in the present. As you look into the future, what do you see in terms of future plans, goals for the company? Where are things headed?
Sure. One of the things that's been interesting with COVID and the pandemic is there was a rapid movement, even more so, to digital transformation in hospitals. And I'll give you some examples that would resonate with everybody. If you think about where telemedicine was before the pandemic, it was on the growth, but all of a sudden when people couldn't show up in doctors' offices, but they could video connect with their doctors, the doors are blowing off. Huge adoption rate, right? That is a form of digital transformation that's accelerated. The ability to do digital check-ins when people couldn't go up and wait in a doctor's office anymore, but could take text messages and say, it's safe, come on up, the doctor's waiting to see you. That sort of technology has been adopted at a breakneck speed. as hospitals have built and are building new facilities, as you know, the population continues to age. And even though more and more things are being done outside the hospital, at the end of the day, there's always going to be a need for us to be patients in the hospital. Certain procedures and that are going to be done in the hospital. So hospitals, through the digital transformation, have focused on what does the digital room of the future look like with these digital technologies, more devices, more technology in the patient room. We have placed ourselves in the middle of that and have looked to be a fulcrum of working with our clients of adopting and developing those technologies. So what I see over the next decade is an acceleration and more touch points with more technology, more digital devices, more digital interactions in the patient room. So that we are seeing that at breakneck speed, particularly in new construction and hospitals. So the challenge for us is how can we leverage that digital technology? How can we create value and not just deploy technology because it's technology? Because us technologists, we love technology, but that doesn't mean that it really provides value, right? And then how can we successfully get it adopted within an organization? And what I see the single largest challenge when people ask me is technology is going to move forward no matter what. And overall, we're good at adopting technology. The overarching problem that I see today is how do you ingrain the technology within the culture of an organization, right? If it's not adopted and the organization does not see value, the culture of the organization, the nurses, doctors, respiratory therapists, dietitians, whomever may be involved in your care in the hospital, if they do not see value of it, and it is not, and it's not adopted successfully on their end, then you've created technology that's not going to provide any value to the patient. So what I tell people, our biggest challenge is creating a value proposition and learning how to create adoption within the culture of an organization. I'll give you an example that your listeners may want to think about. With the advent of electronic medical records and patient portals, right? It's fantastic that I can potentially log in and send a message to my doctor or my nurse about my care. However, if the organization hasn't ingrained that technology in the culture of the organization, what I mean by that is me sending a message to you, but nobody on the other end answering or responding to it. I've created great technology ability to do that. But it's meaningless to me as the patient because no one is on the receiving end that uses that on a daily basis with the understanding that the patients leveraged it because they expect a response back. And they expect a response back and it to be timely. So if I'm telling you, get this great patient portal, but I have nobody on the other end that's going to answer and respond, I've created nothing. I've created a solution. I've created technology that frankly only has one half of the solution. And it's missing the cultural side, which is I'm going to use this. I'm going to use it as part of the way the organization, it's going to be ingrained in the culture. And therefore, I've probably created another problem and not a solution. So those are big issues that we face. And why I say that that's a big issue is nurses are key to us. And as you know, the nursing workload that nurses face and productivity and burnout and all of this is come to a peak right now. So anything that we burden onto a nurse technology-wise, it better have a comparable great value prop that's going to allow nurses to get back to what they really want to do, and that's compassionate care for patients. It's not documenting things electronically into another system. It's not more work that's put on them. It's how can we relieve work burden on them that brings them back to why they're nurses.
My last question for you is going to be about any reading, if you've had a chance to read any good books lately, if there's anything that you might recommend to our listeners.
I am an avid reader, and I do read business books on occasion. I think that most of the things that I've learned have been reading other stories. I love nonfiction stuff, so I like to read a lot of books and information about people that have had problems and hurdles in their life and how they best conquered them. I think, and there's a myriad of those sort of things, and some that are highly inspirational in some regards. If you were to ask me of like the books that I've read and authors that I think about that create the foundation of success in business, it's got to be some of the Stephen Covey books. I think that those are some of the very first ones, like the 7 Habits, that of effective folks that I remember reading early on. And I think that I continue to read because there's some basic philosophy and elements that I think anybody in any industry can take back and learn about. I also think reading things, I always remember some of the first ones reading about Sam and Walmart and the founding of Walmart. Why was it different? Why did people want to go there? Some of those things around customer service, focusing on what people are interested in, not necessarily what you're interested, are very good. Are very good books. But I will tell you, I'm also a sucker, having started out in the military. I particularly am fascinated by reading stories about leaders that faced unforeseeable obstacles and figured out how to move them, particularly many American leaders, whether or not it was a George Washington, a George Patton, or any of those, any of those folks, and the way that they led and rallied folks around them from all walks of life. I think, business at the end of the day, there's a lot that has a lot in common with the military. Business, it's war. You're taking on competition. You're trying to win victory. And at the end of the day, you still have to define your victory, define your mission, focus on that. How are you going to measure? How are you going to achieve it? And those are all very important factors in running any business that you need to think about.
Well, Dave Bennett, CEO of pCare, thank you for joining me today on the HealthBiz podcast to talk about patient engagement and so much more.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Hope it was meaningful for you and your guests.
You've been listening to the HealthBiz podcast with me, David Williams, president of Health Business Group. I conduct in-depth interviews with leaders in healthcare business and policy. If you like what you hear, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite service. While you're at it, go ahead and subscribe on your second and third favorite services as well. There's more good stuff to come, and you won't want to miss an episode. If your organization is seeking strategy consulting services in healthcare, check out our website, healthbusinessgroup.com.